Stop chasing. Stop arguing. Stop forcing. Step back. Stay silent. And watch him change in ways you never could have made happen. Real transformation begins when you pull away. We live in a world where so many people believe that change can be forced. We believe that if we push hard enough, if we argue loud enough, if we nag, guide, or control, the other person will shift, evolve, or become who we want them to be. But that's a lie. Change that is forced is never lasting. Change that happens under pressure often collapses as soon as the pressure is gone. Real transformation, the kind that digs deep and sticks, comes from a place of reflection, awareness, and personal accountability. And that's why pulling back is one of the most powerful things you can do. Pulling back doesn't mean you give up. Pulling back doesn't mean you stop caring. Pulling back means you understand the law of human nature. Growth cannot be rushed. It cannot be mushered. Growth cannot be manufactured from the outside. Growth is an inside job, and the inside needs space. When you pull back, you create space, and space is fertile soil for change. Think about it like this. When you crowd a seed, when you suffocate it, when you overwater it, it struggles to grow. But when you leave it alone, give it the room it needs, the roots dig deeper, the leaves reach higher, and it blossoms naturally. People are no different. When someone is constantly monitored, constantly criticized, constantly manipulated or guided, they develop resistance. They dig in their heels. They argue, they rebel, they act out, they do everything to protect themselves from what they perceive as intrusion. But when you step back, when you release the grip, when you stop pushing, the defenses slowly drop. The walls come down. The resistance fades, not immediately, but gradually, and then you see it. You see the shift. You see the subtle changes that grow into significant transformation. Space doesn't just allow growth, it forces introspection. When someone is constantly met with your presence, your opinions, your judgments, or your corrections, they rarely stop to look at themselves. They're too busy responding to you, too busy defending themselves, too busy trying to prove they're right. But when you remove yourself from the equation, suddenly, they are alone with their thoughts. Suddenly, the excuses aren't so convincing. Suddenly, the patterns are visible and the choices are undeniable. That's where growth begins, when they have no one to blame, no one to manipulate, no one to distract them from themselves. The silence, the absence, the pullback is like a mirror reflecting their actions, their habits, their decisions, and their true character. And mirrors are honest. Mirrors don't lie. Mirrors don't negotiate. Mirrors just reflect. And when you are confronted with the reflection of who you really are, change becomes inevitable. But let's be clear, pulling back isn't easy. It goes against every instinct. We want to fix. We want to correct. We want to steer. We want to control. We want immediate results. And when we pull back, it can feel uncomfortable. We may feel powerless. We may feel like we are abandoning someone or giving up. We may fear the consequences. But what we fail to realize is that our attempts to control often prolong the struggle. Our interference can be the very thing preventing them from evolving. By stepping back, by withdrawing our influence, by giving them the space they need to confront themselves, we create the conditions for authentic change. It is the paradox of growth. The less you push, the more transformation occurs. Space also teaches accountability. When you are constantly intervening, constantly rescuing, constantly managing someone else's life or choices, they never truly take responsibility. They never truly see the results of their actions because someone else is always there to manage, correct, or fix. But when you pull back, they are left with the consequences of their choices. And consequences are powerful teachers. They don't need your commentary, your judgment, or your insistence. Consequences speak for themselves. And when someone experiences them directly, when they feel the weight of their own decisions without external interference, they begin to consider alternatives. They begin to weigh choices more carefully. They begin to grow from the inside out. Think about the stories of people who have changed dramatically in their lives. Often, the catalyst wasn't someone forcing them to change. It was the space to reflect, the quiet moments of realization, the distance that allowed perspective to emerge. People don't change because someone told them to. They change because they face themselves honestly, without distraction, without manipulation, without coercion. And when you give that space, you are not passive, you are strategic. You are creating the optimal environment for growth. You are stepping back not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You are allowing nature to take its course, allowing the internal processes that drive change to unfold, allowing the lessons to be internalized rather than superficially imposed. Space sparks growth because it removes the noise and allows clarity. When someone is constantly confronted with external pressures, it's hard for them to hear their own voice. It's hard for them to see the patterns, to feel the emotions, to understand the consequences, to decide what they truly want. But when you step away, the noise fades. Their mind settles. Their emotions settle. Their perspective becomes clearer. And clarity is the precursor to change. Without it, transformation is impossible. With it, the seeds you planted long ago finally take root, flourish, and bear fruit. And the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't just benefit the person you are stepping back from, it benefits you as well. By pulling back, you preserve your energy, your peace, and your dignity. You are no longer trapped in a cycle of control and frustration. You are no longer consumed by someone else's resistance. You are free to observe, to reflect, and to engage from a position of strength rather than desperation. And when change does occur, it occurs in a sustainable, authentic, and irreversible way because it wasn't forced, it was chosen. It's important to understand that space is not indefinite. Pulling back doesn't mean disappearing forever. It means creating a pause, a boundary, a period of absence that allows the other person to confront reality, face themselves, and consider their own path. It is a temporary withdrawal that creates permanent results. And during this period, the dynamic shifts. They realize your absence. They feel the void. They recognize the value you bring. And in that recognition comes reflection. And in reflection comes growth. Space sparks growth because it honors the natural process of change. It respects the fact that people must arrive at their own understanding, feel their own emotions, and make their own decisions. You cannot do it for them. You cannot force it. You cannot accelerate it with pressure or manipulation. You can only create the conditions, step back, and let them face themselves. And when you do, something remarkable happens. Patterns that once seemed fixed start to shift. Behaviors that once seemed unchangeable start to transform. Attitudes that once seemed rigid start to soften. And slowly, steadily, inevitably, change takes root, grows, and becomes real. Silence is one of the most misunderstood tools in human relationships. So many people think that speaking, reacting, arguing, defending, or explaining is the way to influence others, to fix situations, or to make someone see their mistakes. But the truth is, constant talking, constant reactions, constant explanations, and constant defense often do the opposite. They cloud judgment. They create noise. They create distraction. They prevent the other person from seeing themselves clearly. That's why silence, when used strategically, is not weakness. Silence is power. Silence is clarity. Silence is clarity. Silence is a mirror. When you stop reacting, when you stop arguing, you create a space where the other person is forced to face reality without distractions. People are often skilled at ignoring, deflecting, or rationalizing their actions when someone else is there to engage, to explain, or to justify. But when you stop, when your voice no longer fills the room, when your reactions are no longer a shield or a weapon, the reflection of their behavior becomes unavoidable. Suddenly, the chaos they created, the patterns they repeated, the mistakes they made, they all become visible. Silence doesn't accuse. Silence doesn't accuse. Silence doesn't pressure. Silence simply exposes. And when someone sees themselves in that silence, in the absence of your interference, real understanding begins. Your silence works as a mirror because it removes the noise you've been adding to the situation. Think about it. When someone is constantly met with your anger, your disappointment, your arguments, your corrections, they never stop to look at themselves. They are too busy reacting to you, defending themselves, and protecting their ego. But when you stop, suddenly they are alone with their thoughts. Suddenly, the excuses and justifications no longer have an audience. Suddenly, they have no choice but to confront their own actions. And in that confrontation, growth begins. Reflection begins. Reflection begins. Awareness begins. And awareness is the first step toward change. Silence is a mirror because it forces accountability. When you are always present to respond, to explain, to correct, or to fight, the other person never fully experiences the consequences of their actions. They are never fully confronted with the reality of what they've done or how they behaved. But when you withdraw, when you stop participating in the cycle, the consequences are no longer filtered through your reactions. They become real. They become undeniable. They cannot be blamed on anyone else. And when someone faces consequences directly, without excuses, without defenses, without distractions, they are forced to reflect. They are forced to see patterns, to understand mistakes, and to make a choice to improve or continue on the same path. Using silence as a mirror requires patience and self-control. It is easy to react, to argue, to explain, to push, and to defend. That is the natural instinct. That is the immediate, impulsive response. But true power lies in restraint. True influence lies in knowing that stepping back, holding your silence, and refusing to engage in the reactive cycle is often the most effective way to create change. The mirror you hold up in silence is not something that can be rushed. It cannot be forced. It works over time. It works gradually. It works as the person finally begins to see themselves without the distortions of your interference. And what is revealed is often more powerful than anything you could have said, argued, or forced. Silence as a mirror also teaches humility. When someone is confronted with their reflection in your absence, they're reminded that the world does not revolve around their behavior, that their actions have consequences, that other people have boundaries, that respect is earned, not demanded. And in that moment, the reflection is not just about what they did to you, it's about who they are, how they show up in life, and what choices they are making daily. And when someone begins to see this truth, transformation begins, because no one can maintain patterns of behavior when confronted with an honest reflection, even if it is silent. The beauty of silence is that it is patient. It does not rush. It does not push. It does not force. It simply exists as a constant presence of non-engagement, allowing the other person to meet themselves where they are. And meeting oneself without external input is where true insight occurs. People often avoid this insight because it is uncomfortable. They avoid facing mistakes, patterns, and consequences because it's easier to deflect, distract, and blame. But your silence removes the escape routes. Your silence removes the arguments, the justifications, and the negotiations. Your silence forces the reflection to happen. And reflection is uncomfortable at first, but discomfort is the gateway to growth. Silence as a mirror is also empowering for you. When you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, when you stop defending, you reclaim your energy, your focus, and your peace. You no longer allow someone else's actions to dictate your emotional state. You no longer feed chaos with chaos. You no longer become trapped in cycles that do not serve you. Instead, you observe, you step back, you wait, and you let the reflection do the work. And often, when change occurs, it is more authentic because it was initiated internally by the other person, not externally by your insistence or pressure. This is why silence is so misunderstood. People confuse silence with weakness. They confuse absence with surrender. They confuse stepping back with giving up. But in reality, silence is strategic. Silence is deliberate. Silence is powerful. It holds up a mirror to the truth. And in that mirror, people finally see themselves. They finally see the patterns. They finally see the consequences. They finally see the consequences. They finally see the choices they've been avoiding. And once they see it, once the reflection becomes undeniable, the opportunity for change emerges naturally, without force, without pressure, without argument, without manipulation. Silence as a mirror also teaches patience. Transformation is not instantaneous. Change is not immediate, but silence allows it to unfold in its own time. It allows growth to emerge organically. It allows lessons to sink in deeply rather than being superficially imposed. When you combine silence with consistent boundaries, respect for yourself, and withdrawal of unnecessary energy. You create the perfect environment for the other person to evolve. And what emerges is not just change, it is real, lasting transformation that could never have occurred while you were reacting, arguing, or explaining. When you wield silence intentionally, you are not passive, you are not weak. You are holding up a mirror that reflects reality in its purest form. You are creating an environment where the other person cannot hide behind excuses, manipulation, or distractions. You are showing them, without saying a word, the truth of their actions, the reality of their behavior, and the consequences of their choices. And sometimes the impact of silence is greater than 1,000 arguments, 1,000 lectures, or 1,000 attempts to force change, because silence is honest, silence is clear, silence is undeniable. And when someone finally looks into that mirror, the transformation that follows is often irreversible, authentic, and profound.